My name is Sasha Gilman, and I am speaking from Woodstock, New York, where I now live. My birthday is July 17th, 1928. Mine was a working class immigrant neighborhood. People of very modest means. Generally speaking, kids went to high school and then went into the workforce. There were a few of us, not too many, that were graduated from high school and went to college. That was the exception, not the rule. To the University of Illinois, and that was really tremendously exciting because that meant I left home, which I was anxious to do, and I lived on campus, and that was in Urbana, Illinois. It was a couple of hours from Chicago. Which got on a train, and it was a very exciting time. We took the train back and forth, but not frequently. We came home for, Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter holiday, but not too frequently because train fare was a component we had to be very careful of. I majored in speech and drama. I was gung-ho. Once I left, I loved being at the University of Illinois. And when I first went on campus, it was just after the war. And there were many GIs coming back. So housing was a problem. So my first semester, I lived with a private family, both of whom were instructors at the university. And they really opened up my horizons as to what the world was like. Not that my parents weren't very bright, they were, particularly my mother, but they were not formally educated. And the people I lived with knew about everything. They knew about music and drama and poetry and history. And so that was almost better than the classes that I attended. I did not want to go into the television industry, but it was in the arts. And I knew that there would be jobs available, or at least I thought I knew, but then at that time I thought I knew everything. Actually, I did not graduate from the University of Illinois. My father died when I was a senior, so I completed my degree at Roosevelt College in the city, so I could live with my mom, who was then widowed. And I learned that there were jobs available at NBC in Chicago, and I applied and got a job. And that's what started. It was shy of 2 years, certainly not a long time. But what my job was at NBC, among other things, I was kind of, the kid that they sent to get coffee and deliver messages. But while I was there, I met many people from the ad agency in New York that was in charge of the show that I was working on. And I set up the commercials. Everything was done live. And so when they needed a food display or a laundry display or whatever the sponsor happened to be, I would get the props, set them up. And so I met all these people, and they offered me a job while I was still in Chicago to come to New York. And that was Mecca. I went home and packed my bag immediately. And I also had a friend who was an actress, and when she heard that I was going to go to New York, she said, "I'm coming with you." So she and I set out for New York. During that time, we hung out in places where would-be actors, would-be directors, everybody who was kind of starting out in a career in a relatively new field. It wasn't that new, but relatively. And so we met a lot of people who then became really very famous in the industry. My jobs changed, and they did, to better jobs, better paying jobs. We got better apartments. But I do remember the first apartment, and it was very funky. In all truth, it was a pickup. I was shopping for props for a show, and I went into a fabric store, and obviously the proprietor didn't have much to do, so he engaged me in conversation and said that he had a friend of his who wanted to work for an ad agency, and would I talk to his friend? And I said, sure, I would. And I ultimately got a call from said friend, and we had lunch, and we talked about the industry. And then I said I was going home to Chicago to visit my mother. And when I came back, there he was, waiting at the airport. So a few months after that, we were married. I had my first kid very soon. I was 24 when I got married. That was practically middle-aged then. So I had my first child when I was 25. After I was pregnant and lived in Queens, and then when my second child was born, we lived in the United Nations housing development, at that time also in Queens. And that was a wonderful place for my kids to grow up, because they met so many different kinds of people from so many different places. Let's see, I was working for a public relations firm at that time, and so was my husband, and we decided we'd buy some land and build a second home in the country. And we knew of Woodstock, and we liked the diversity and the kind of crazy, quirky people that lived here. So we did get some land, and we had a house built, and it was when my husband was trying to put in a hi-fi music system that he realized there was no radio station in this small town, which was world famous because of its musicians and the music industry and the people who lived here. So he got this crazy idea that we would start a radio station. It is a very, very complicated process then as it is now. But it took almost 6 or 7 years to do it, but we were ultimately granted a license to open the station. But I really felt that it owned us rather than we owned it. After we sold the station, we then had both the time and the financial means, and we began to travel. Certainly went to England and Scotland and Ireland and Italy and Portugal and Spain. And then years later, we also went to Japan and China and any place we could think of going. And it was all really great fun. It did not happen. You really learn so much. I mean, I learned a lot in school, and I am very grateful for the education I got. It was very, very necessary to be educated to get where you want to in life. even if you don't understand the direct correlation immediately. But travel is a whole different sphere. You can see the world from other people's perspectives. And I would encourage anybody who is able to travel to do so. It enriches your life forever.